Well, Jennifer, why don't we go ahead and start?
Okay, that sounds good. Hi, everyone. I'm Jennifer Smith, and I'm an immigration attorney in Glenwood Springs, Colorado. And I'm going to start by walking through the USCIS forms for applying for DACA. And just to back up one second, USCIS are the initials for the United States Citizenship and Immigration Service. Some people refer to them as UCIS. They are where you will file any application for an initial or renewal DACA application, and they will be the ones deciding the case. So what I've done is, you should be able to see this on our shared screen, is the first form that I have up is the USCIS form. If you can look in, I believe it's like the top, hold on, I've got too many things open on my screen here. I'm sorry, one second. So in the top right-hand corner, you will see the different form numbers. Uh-oh, sorry, hold on, I see what happened there. Okay.
Let me interrupt you real quick, Jennifer.
Yeah.
For those of you watching, if you have any questions and you're on your computer or phone and can put them in the chat, please do. And we'll watch for those questions. Or you can raise your hand, use the little hand icon, something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And whoever's checking the chat, feel free to interrupt me.
Okay.
So the first form that I have up on my screen, it says consideration of deferred action for childhood arrivals. And in the top right-hand corner, you'll see it says form I-821D. So this is the form for DACA. And in order to help people review your forms with you, I think it's great to take a first stab at these forms and get really familiar with the information you need to put on them. The more you can draft this in advance of meeting with an attorney to review your form, the more efficient you can be, and the easier it is to spot anything that's missing or any mistakes or anything like that. So we're going to drop down on the form to where it says the word start here. I'm just highlighting that so you can kind of see where I am. And it's part 1, information about you for initial or renewal requests. So assuming most people are here because they want to do a first time initial DACA application, I'm going to focus on that. But it's pretty straightforward if you're doing a renewal as well. So for the initial request people, you're going to check box 1 and say this is an initial request. If you're not an initial request and you're renewing, you would check box 2 and you would put the date in down here of when your current work permit expires. Because if you're filing for an initial, you're not going to have that date. You can just leave. We can leave a date off of that box. You will, however, want to make sure you put in your full name. You start with your last name or your family name, your full name. So if your last name has 2 parts, you want to put both names in there. For given name, you want to put your first name, and then middle name, you want to include that as well. You want to give all full, complete names. The next area down on the form is your U.S. mailing address. Now, your mailing address may be different for some people than where you physically live. And so that could be a post office box, or maybe it's really most secure if you get your mail somewhere other than where you're currently living. You want to put in here your mailing address. If the location of where you want your mail to go is at a location where somebody else lives, so let's say it's like your aunt's house. The first line where it says in care of, you want to put your aunt's name and then her address. If it's a PO box, a post office box, and you don't hold the post office box, if it's not in your name, again, you're going to want to put the name of the person who has that post office box. Because sometimes the Postal Service won't deliver it if your name isn't on the postal box. So that's an important step I want to make sure you add if your mailing address is different from your home address. And then we'll go over here to this column for removal proceedings and information. You can apply for DACA if you've been in immigration court in the past, if you've been in what we call removal proceedings, or even if you've been ordered deported in the past. If that applies to you, I would say that doing this process on your own without retaining an attorney to represent you is probably not the best choice. But I want to explain what that is. Assuming that we're helping people that have never been in removal proceedings, for this question number 5, you're going to select the box, no, I've never been in proceedings. It doesn't apply to me, which means these questions down here, 5A through 5G, don't apply to you either. You can just keep going on the form.
Okay, excuse me,
Yeah.
Jennifer, let me interrupt again. We have a few new participants on, and so I just wanted to let everybody know that this is being streamed on Facebook Live and recorded. And if, I apologize, we had tried to schedule interpretation into Spanish, so, but that has not happened as of now. So we're doing this in English, but if you have questions, please put them in the chat and we can answer. We can take questions in Spanish too. So please just put them in the chat, or if you're watching on Facebook Live, please put them on the Facebook Live chat. Thank you.
And I can try to talk in Spanish a little bit. My Spanish is not fluent, but I will tell you, I can read the questions and information in Spanish. If you're just joining us and you speak Spanish, en este momento revisando los formularios para DACA, empezó con el formulario I-821D. Ahora revisar los primeros pasos en el formulario, parte para su nombre completo, parte para su dirección, para correo. No, en ciertos casos, su dirección por correo no es el mismo de su dirección de su casa, que en donde vive. So, aquí es lugar para su dirección de correo. En el próximo parte, en la primera página, es un parte si notar si estaban en procedimientos de deportación en el pasado. Si usted está en procedimientos de deportación ahora o en el pasado, no aplicar sin abogado o abogada para DACA. Okay. Okay. In the second page of this form, we're going to start with question number 6. Question number 6 asks for your alien registration number. If you have never applied for any type of immigration benefit or for DACA in the past, you're not going to have an A number, as it's called. There's nothing to put in here. The same goes for a social security number. You won't have anything to put in here. So these two may not apply to you, and that's fine. En pregunta 6 es pedir para su número A, su número de inmigración, si no apliqué para DACA o otros beneficios de inmigración en el pasado. Esta pregunta no aplique a usted. Y es lo mismo para pregunta número 7 sobre su seguro social. Si no tiene, no pone nada en esta parte. Pero, okay. Pregunta 8, in question 8, date of birth. Everyone's going to have a date of birth. You're going to put your date of birth here. Next one is gender. Now, these forms only have binary choices for gender. So you're going to pick the one that applies to you best. And if neither one really applies to you, feel free to handwrite on the form what you prefer. I just would make sure that you pick one of the boxes just so the box is checked. But you could handwrite a notation on there if that was more appropriate in your situation.
Excuse me, Jennifer, someone just asked the question, what's the A number again?
Okay, so the A number, and was the question in Spanish or English?
English.
Okay, the A number or alien registration number is the number given to you by U.S. Immigration Services. It will only be given to you once you've applied for some type of benefit or for DACA. So for most people, if this is your first time applying for DACA, you will not have a number to put here, and it should be blank. Or if you don't feel comfortable leaving something blank, what we recommend is that you put N/A. Not applicable is what that means. Okay. Para pregunta 8 y 9, pone su fecha de nacimiento y su gender. I just forgotten there, masculino o femenino. Si no aplica a usted o escoger otra categoría, escoge una categoría y pone notas sobre su situación. For questions 10 through 12, this is the city or town where you were born, the country where you were born, your current country of residence. And this is question number 11. Now, I fill this out as the United States. All of you are going to be living in the United States if you're filling out this application, because you can only apply for it if you live in the United States. So you can put that your current country of residence is the United States. I've never had a problem with that. Question number 12 is your country of citizenship. So number 10 and number 12, 10B, I should say, question 10B and question 12 should probably be the same country. Now, there are some people who have been born in one country and have citizenship in a different country, in which case those answers will be different. But for the majority of you, those will be the same. So en preguntas 10 hasta 12 pone información sobre el lugar de nacimiento, su país de nacimiento y su país de ciudadanía. Y en la pregunta 11, su país de residencia es ok para poner Estados Unidos. Pregunta 13, para su estatus marital, escoge categoría para usted. So for number 13, your marital status, you're going to pick the one that applies to you. If you're married, say married. If you're single, say single. If you are holding yourself out as married in other places and want to be common law married, then the answer is married. Okay, question 14A through 14C, other names. If you've used other names, let's say now you're married and have a married name that you put on page 1. Page 2, you're going to put like your maiden name, the name you had before you got married, if it changed. If you've ever had a name change, or you've just used other names for other formal documents for school or work or something else, you're going to want to put the name there. So, para preguntas 14A hasta 14C, pone otros nombres de uso en su vida. So, si es un nombre soltero o nombre, si uso otros nombres en el pasado formal para escuela o trabajo, o se usa o tiene un cambio de nombre oficial, pone los otros nombres que uso en su vida en este espacios. Okay.
Yes. I have a question in the chat.
Okay.
And it's in Spanish, and I'm going to read it to you. Should I read it to you in Spanish? I'm going to.
Sure.
Because Cynthia, I think, is still trying to get home from work.
Okay.
It's from Claudia. Si mi hijo estuvo aquí en Estados Unidos 6 años y salimos para México 5 años y ahorita tenemos un tiempo de 5 años, ¿él puede aplicar para DACA?
Okay, so we're talking about whether the child's been present in the U.S. long enough to qualify for DACA. And who wrote the question? What was the name?
Claudia.
Okay, Claudia. Okay. Claudia, en discúlpame porque no puede ver los datos que pone en su pregunta, pero para calificar para DACA ahora, su hijo, pienso, necesita establecer su presencia en los Estados Unidos antes de 15 de junio de 2007 hasta que ahora. Es posible calificar si salir por un tiempo muy corto durante este tiempo, pero recuerde que en sus datos pone que el salir para mucho tiempo, años posible. So, si él no está en los Estados Unidos continuamente, desde 15 de julio de 2017 hasta que ahora no califica en general. Okay. Hopefully I answered that question. We're going to keep going with the form. So, en el formulario, pregunta 15 es sobre etnicidad y 16 es sobre raza, etc. This part of the form from 15 to 20 is your basic biographical information. Esta parte es su información biográfica básico, so color de ojos, color de pelo. So pone la información correcta para usted aquí. Okay. Después en parte 2. So now we're in part 2, where it says residence and travel information. In order to qualify for DACA, in this question, you have to be able to honestly answer yes, that you've been continuously residing in the US from June 15th, 2007 up till the present time. That's what we just talked about with Claudia's question. So for every DACA application that I can think of, this is most going to be yes for everyone who's eligible. So, esta pregunta, pedir para confirmar que la persona que aplicó para DACA estaba en los Estados Unidos continuamente desde 15 de junio de 2017 hasta que ahora. So, en cada caso donde la persona es elegible para este beneficio, la respuesta es sí. Si su respuesta es no, probablemente no califica para DACA. If you can't answer yes to this question, then you probably don't qualify for DACA. All right, so you'll see down here there's instructions about if this is an initial request, what we're going to need to put on the form on the next page, and if you're a renewal request, what you need to put on the form. So we're going to go to that page now, and we're going to look at addresses. So if this is your initial request for DACA, you have to put every address in the United States from your date of entry until now. So a good idea before you start filling out this form is to sit down and write down every place you've ever lived. And if you don't remember, talk to your mom, talk to your aunts, talk to your family, look for bills, do everything you can so you can record every address and the month and year you've lived at those addresses. So en esta parte del formulario, pedir todas las direcciones en los Estados Unidos después de su entrada en los Estados Unidos hasta que ahora. So, es una buena idea para investigar con su familia todas las direcciones en los Estados Unidos para usted, y también necesita poner las fechas en cada dirección, en cada residencia. So, es una buena idea antes de llenar el formulario, tomar notas para investigar con su familia todas las fechas, investigar sus biles, y otros documentos de su familia para confirmar todas las direcciones. And that's everything on this side. Okay, now we jump over here. Esta parte del formulario pedir información sobre sus viajes. So, las instrucciones dice que lista todos sus viajes afuera de los Estados Unidos después de 15 de junio de 2007. I don't know why I'm struggling with that date. So now at this point on an initial request, we have to list, every time you've left the United States after June 15, 2007, no matter how long or short it is. The length of that trip may determine whether you're eligible for DACA or not, but we still have to put them all. If you've had none, then you would have nothing to put here. If you have trips, you're going to list them and explain why you were gone. Like, let's say maybe you came to the US as a kid, and then at some point you had to go back for a funeral or a wedding or something for like a week, and then you came back again. That's probably just fine. So en este parte de formulario son viajes, so necesita poner todos sus viajes de fuera de los Estados Unidos después de su entrada en los Estados Unidos y después de la fecha de 15 de junio de 2007. So, por ejemplo, si entró a los Estados Unidos en 2005, se queda hasta que 2008 y en la Navidad de 2008 regresar a su país para una semana, por ejemplo, y después reentró a los Estados Unidos. Necesita poner este viaje en el formulario. And Cynthia, please fix my Spanish if it's terrible.
Jennifer,
yeah.
Cynthia's been answering a couple of questions that have come in on the Facebook Live.
Oh, good.
I think they're basic questions that she has been able to answer. So,
okay,
but she'll interrupt you if she gets one.
Okay. Thank you. So now down to question number 8. Pregunta 8 en el derecho del formulario en esta página es una pregunta sobre viajes después de 15 de agosto 2012. Si salí los Estados Unidos después de esta fecha sin permiso, necesita escoger no. Si no sale los Estados Unidos después de 15 de agosto de 2012, escoge sí. Preguntas 9 y 10, solamente sus documentos. So in question 9 and 10, they're talking about your like travel documents. So you'll need to put down, you know, if for example, you're from Mexico and you have a Mexican passport, you're going to want to put down Mexico here and the number of that passport and when it expires. If you ever had a border crossing card at any time in your life, even if it's expired, you'll want to put the border crossing card number here. So en preguntas de 9, necesita poner información sobre su pasaporte de su país. So si usted de México, necesita poner México en pregunta 9A. En 9B necesita su número de pasaporte y la última espacio necesita pone la fecha de expiración de su pasaporte. Y pregunta 10 es pedir para información de su tarjeta de cruzar la frontera, si tiene. Si no tiene, no necesita poner nada. If you don't have those things, you don't need to put anything down. Okay, so part 3 down here. The first question again is confirming your eligibility for DACA. It wants to verify that you entered the US before you turned 16. So for anyone applying for DACA initial applications, you need to be able to check yes to this box. If you can't check yes to the box, then you don't qualify at this time. So en esta parte, pregunta 1, pedir para confirmar que usted entró a los Estados Unidos y vive en los Estados Unidos antes de, tiene 16 años, discúlpame, 16 años. Si usted no puede responder sí a esa pregunta, no califica para DACA. Okay. The second question here is the date of your initial entry to the United States. So in my example that I gave before, if you came to the US in 2005 and you stayed and then left briefly in 2008, the date you're going to put here is the 2005 date of when you entered. En esta pregunta, pidió la fecha inicial de su primerita entrada en los Estados Unidos. So en mi ejemplo anterior, si entró en 2005, pone esa fecha aquí. Okay, y también lugar de su entrada inicial aquí, you know, cerca de McAllen, Texas, por ejemplo. So number 3 is asking the place of initial entry to the US. You know, if you want to say as close as you remember or whatever you've been told, if you don't know the exact date the day, the month, the year, you want to put as much information as you can. So, you know, if you know, well, I know it was June of 2005, then you're going to put June of 2005. If you know it was summer of 2005, then you'll put summer of 2005. En estos espacios, en las preguntas 2 y 3, pone la información más detalle posible. So, por ejemplo, si no recuerda o si su familia no recuerda la fecha exactamente, el día, mes, año, pone la más información posible. So, si recuerda su trabajo fue en, junio de 2005, pone junio de 2005. Si no recuerda mes, pero recuerda es verano de 2005, por ejemplo, pone verano de 2005. Y también por lugar, si no sabe el lugar exactamente, porque no es en un lugar formal, en un, una entrada formal, pone la ciudad más cerca de su entrada. So McAllen, Texas, por ejemplo, or El Paso, or whatever.
Jennifer, there's a question.
Uh-huh.
And it's in Spanish. It says, buenas tardes, mi nombre es Andrea. Yo quiero saber si mi hija aplica para DACA. Nosotros entramos al país en abril de 2019. ¿Ya aplica o debo esperar más tiempo? Ella está estudiando y tiene 9 años.
Okay. So she said he entered in April 2019, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So, Andrea, right? Gracias para su pregunta. Si su hija entró en 2019 y no califica, en las reglas ahora para DACA necesita establecer entrada antes de 15 de junio de 2007. So, si no entró hasta 2019, no califica en este momento. Es posible cambiar las reglas de DACA en el futuro, pero ahora no. La otra cosa en su pregunta es, para aplicar para DACA ahora, también la persona que aplicar tiene 15 años en el momento que aplicar también. Ok. All right, vamos a proceder. En esta página aquí, se pregunta pedir información sobre estatus cuando entró a los Estados Unidos. No, estatus en el fecha de 15 de junio de 2012. So, this question is asking, what was your status on June 15th, 2012? Well, you had to be in the US on that date. That's one of the requirements. And you could say no lawful status. You could say that I had status, but it expired, or some other status. The most common answer here is no status on that date. So en esta pregunta, en esa fecha, si no tiene estatus legal, porque su visa venció o si no tiene estatus en toda su vida, la respuesta es no tiene estatus, no lawful status. En pregunta 5A, se pregunta pedir si recibe un archivo de su entrada del gobierno de los Estados Unidos cuando entró. Se llama formulario I-94. Si no tiene estatus cuando entró a los Estados Unidos, no tiene este formulario, es ok para poner no. This question is asking if you ever received a permit when you entered the United States, referred to as an I-94. If you didn't enter with legal status at the time of your entry to the United States, then the answer to this question is going to be no.
Jennifer, there's another question.
Uh-huh.
It says, ¿qué son los requisitos para aplicar para DACA?
Okay, I'm going to go over those. I was going to go over those after we get through the forms, since we started with the forms. So if you don't mind waiting, I'll get to that question. Primero vamos a revisar todos los formularios y después hablar un poquito más sobre los requisitos. Vamos a hablar sobre su pregunta en en el futuro. Gracias para su paciencia. Okay. 5B asks if you did get a permit when you entered, you need to put the number there if you have it. If you don't have it, you can say, I don't know what it is, I lost it, whatever. En esta pregunta 5B, pedir para número de su permiso en la frontera si tiene. Si no tiene, no pone nada. Pregunta 5C, si recibe un permiso cuando entró a los Estados Unidos porque entró con permiso, necesita poner la fecha de expiración de este permiso. Si no recibe un permiso, no pone nada o pone NA, no aplique. Okay. These questions down here, 6, 7, and 8, are about your education. Again, these are part of the requirements for DACA. So you'll need to be able to fill something in here as part of meeting the requirements for DACA. Question 6 is about whether you're you basically are saying in question 6, whether you're still in school, currently in school, or if you graduated from high school, or if you graduated from a GED program or something similar. Question 7 is saying, okay, if you're in school or you graduated from school, we want to know where you went to school, where it was located. Question 8 is the date of graduation or the last date you attended that school. So pregunta 6, 7 y 8 es preguntas sobre su educación, los requisitos de educación para DACA. So pregunta 6, pedir su estatus de educación en este momento, si graduó de high school o en este momento están en escuela de GED o high school. Pone la información aquí. Pregunta 7 es pedir nombre, ciudad y estado de su escuela que se graduó o que asiste en este momento. Y pregunta 8 es la fecha de graduación o la última fecha se asiste su escuela en este momento. Okay, no questions. Okay, not yet. Okay, next part, military service. If you are a member of the U.S. military, you would put yes here and you would fill in the appropriate information. En esta parte, pedir información si usted es un miembro los servicios militares de los Estados Unidos. Si aplica a usted, pone la información correcta aquí. Ok. En esta parte 4, es para los dos tipos de aplicaciones de DACA, para iniciar y renovar. This part is for both renewal and initial DACA applications. These are questions about any criminal history. This is one of those areas where if you think you may have issues, we're going to recommend that you hire an attorney because we want to make sure that we don't put you at risk in the application, or that if you are at any risk, you know what those risks are before you submit it. Si usted piensa que tiene historia criminal o historia con cortes o otros cosas, es una buena idea hablar con un abogado individual para usted, para obtener avisos y entender los riesgos si quiere aplicar antes de enviar su aplicación. El primer pregunta, pedir si usted fue arrestada o recibe cargos por o tiene una convicción de un caso criminal menor o de felonía. So this one is a pretty broad question. It wants to know if you've ever, in all of your life, ever been arrested, charged with, or convicted of any type of incident. The only things that don't apply here are minor traffic violations. And even those can count if they involved alcohol or drugs. So las únicas casos criminales o casos de corte o casos de tráfico es discúlpame. I'm going to start over. En esta pregunta, todos los incidentes en su vida aplique, excepto de incidentes de tráfico sin alcohol y sin drogas. Okay. Si responder sí, necesita incluir los documentos certificados de corte, de policía, etc. So, again, es muy importante. Si responde sí, necesita hablar con un abogado individualmente. So, again, if you do have any of these things and need to say yes, it doesn't mean you're automatically disqualified. It just means you may need to talk to an attorney, and you're going to need to collect all the certified records from court and police in order to complete the application. Para clarificar si tiene arrestos o si necesita responder sí, es posible usted califica por DACA, pero necesita hablar con un abogado para confirmar. Okay, I keep saying the same thing. Pregunta 2. Es una pregunta sobre arrestos o cargos en otros países. Si aplique otra vez, necesita incluir archivos y necesita hablar con un abogado sobre las consecuencias o riesgos o elegibilidad para DACA. This is asking for any arrests or charges outside of the U.S. Now I can't remember what I've said in English and what I've said in Spanish. If you do have something outside the U.S., you need to include the records again. And again, you're going to want to talk to an attorney to make sure you're still eligible for DACA, even with that history. Okay. Pregunta 3. Pedir si tiene una historia con actividades de terroristas. Usualmente si pone sí, no califica para DACA. This question is asking if you've ever engaged in or plan to engage in terrorist activities. I will say that if you answer yes to this question, you probably don't qualify for DACA. Question 4 is asking if you are now or have ever been in the past a member of a gang. Again, that would be something to talk to an attorney about if you think you need to say yes. Pregunta 4 es pedir información, confirmar si usted es miembro de una pandilla ahora o fue un miembro en el pasado. Si responder sí, necesita hablar con una abogada otra vez. A todos estos preguntas, si responder sí, necesita hablar con un abogado. Okay. Pregunta 5 es pedir preguntas sobre su historia con matar otras personas o participar en traficando de personas o causa daños significantes a otras personas. So these questions in 5 are basically asking if you've ever really been involved in killing, torturing, or hurting other people. Pregunta 6 es si pedir a jóvenes menos de 15 años para servir en combat, en guerra, por ejemplo. So question 6 is asking if you've ever encouraged someone under the age of 15 to serve in armed combat. Question 7 is asking kind of the same thing. Pregunta 7 es más o menos lo mismo. Si usted usó una persona menos de 15 años para pelear personas o participar en guerra. Okay. I'm counting on Cynthia to step in when I screw this up. Okay. This part right here is where you will say whether you can read and understand English on your own or whether you had to use an interpreter to understand this form. The interpreter is not the same as someone who prepares it necessarily. An interpreter is just someone who interprets the words on the form. They don't tell you how to answer the questions. So en esta parte necesita escoger si puede leer y entender inglés o si necesita usar una interpretación para entender el formulario. And uso de una persona para interpretación no es lo mismo como una persona que preparar el formulario. I can't talk, interpretor, solamente traducir las palabras en el formulario, no avisar cómo responder, solamente compartir las palabras en el formulario. Ok. En esta parte aquí es la firma de requester. This is where you sign. You, the person applying for DACA, sign here. You're the requester. And when you sign this form, you're saying that everything on the form is true. You're signing under penalty of perjury, meaning you swear and that everything's accurate. So en esta parte es donde la persona que aplicar para DACA necesita firmar y poner la fecha que completar el formulario. Cuando firmar este formulario toma confirmar que todo es correcto. Y no mentira, todo es la verdad. Y abajo es un lugar para poner su número de teléfono de celular y su correo electrónico. And here's where you can put your phone number and your email address. Aquí es donde pone información sobre en la persona que ayuda con la interpretación con el formulario, si aplique a usted. Okay? Y aquí es un poquito más información sobre la persona que ayuda con la interpretación y un lugar para firma y fecha. This is a little bit additional stuff the interpreter needs to fill out before they can sign and date the form. Number 7, the rest of this form is all if you had someone help you prepare it. So, en esta parte 7, solamente si uso una persona para preparar el formulario, para avisar los respuestos o entender o escoger este formulario. En el estado de Colorado, esa persona necesita ser un abogado o abogada licenciada. En Colorado, hay leyes que dice que si no es un abogado o abogada, no puede ayudar para preparar formularios. Okay. That's everything. Es todo para ese formulario. Okay. So, pero cuando aplicar para DACA hay 3 formularios. Este formulario y el próximo formulario es formulario de permiso de trabajo. Why? Sorry, 1 second. I can't get it to show me it. Discúlpame. ¿Dónde está el formulario?
Let me just jump in and Cynthia could put it into Spanish too, but if anyone has any questions, if you're on Facebook Live, just type them in.
Okay.
And if you're watching, we can see. If you're watching, either put them in the chat or do the little raise hand thing at the bottom of your screen. If you can find that, and I can allow you to speak, and there aren't that many of us on this. So if you want to ask a question in person, you can do that.
Definitely.
Si tienen algunas preguntas, la pueden poner arriba donde dice preguntas y respuestas, que es una Q y una A. O también pueden ponerle los 3 puntitos de abajo y hay una que dice chat o también hay otro que dice raise hand y eso es para que pueda hablar si quiere hacer una pregunta hablando o también si están viendo por Facebook lo pueden poner en los comentarios.
Okay. So that first form that we just went over is the application for DACA. The second form is the application for the work permit. So primero formulario es su aplicación para calificar para DACA. Ese formulario es para su permiso de trabajo. El gobierno necesita aprobar su aplicación para DACA para aprobar su permiso de trabajo. Si negar su aplicación para DACA, negar su aplicación para permiso de trabajo también. Okay. So you have to have both. The government has to approve your DACA application in order to give you a work permit. If they deny your application for DACA, they will deny the application for the work permit at the same time. Okay. In this form, we're going to go down here, your reasons for applying. En esta parte, es los razones para su aplicación para un permiso de trabajo. If this is your first time applying for DACA, you're going to check box 1A, an initial permission to accept employment. Si es su primera aplicación para DACA, escoge 1A, permiso inicial. If you were renewing DACA for some reason, you would choose 1C, that it's a renewal of a work permit that you already have. Si renovar su DACA, escoge 1C, renovación de permiso. Okay. Y después pone información sobre su nombre legal completo. Y aquí al derecho necesita poner todos los otros nombres que usó en el pasado. Okay, y aquí, and the other part up there, you want to put any other names you've ever used, like we talked about on the other form. On part 2 here, again, you're listing your U.S. mailing address. This should be the same address on both forms for where you get your mail. En esta pregunta, pedir información sobre su correo, su dirección de correo, donde recibe su correo. En pregunta 6, necesito confirmar si su dirección por correo es el mismo que donde vive. So in question 6, they're asking you, is where you get your mail the same place you live? If it's the same, you're going to check yes, and then you get to skip to question number 8. But if you pick no, then you have to put your other address, your physical address, if it's different from your mailing address. So si su dirección de en donde vive es diferente de en donde recibe su correo, necesita escoger no, las direcciones no son los mismos y pone en preguntas 7A hasta 7D su dirección físicamente en que donde vive. Okay. Question number 8 is asking for the A number again. Again, since we're talking about initial DACA applications, you're not going to have an A number. If you're renewing, you will have an A number and you can put that in there. En pregunta 8, pide para su número A. Si es su aplicación inicial para DACA, no tiene número A usualmente. Es una renovación, tiene número A, pone aquí. Number 9 is about whether you have an online USCIS account number. So this is something they've started more recently where you can create an account on the USCIS website for your application. This can be really handy if you want to get constant updates on your case. It's not entirely accurate, but it can be. And if you've created such an account, you would put the number there. If you don't have one, it's fine. En esta pregunta número 9, pedía para su número de cuenta con UCIS. Recientemente UCIS establecer cuentas para casos con inmigración. Es una buena idea para crear este tipo de cuenta si quiere más información sobre su caso, pero no es un requisito. Si tiene este tipo de cuenta, pone su número aquí. Si no tiene, no problema, pone NA o no pone nada. Okay. Number 10 is gender, marital status. Number 10 and 11, we've talked about those. Fill them in. Preguntas 10 y 11 sobre su gender, sexo y estatus marital. So pone correcta información aquí. Pregunta 12 es pedir si llenar una aplicación para un permiso de trabajo antes o en el pasado. usualmente es no. This question is asking if you've ever filed a form I-765 for a work permit in the past. Usually this is a no, especially if this is your first time DACA. If you're renewing, then the answer is yes. Question 13, has the Social Security Administration ever given you a Social Security card? Again, if you've never applied for anything in the past, the answer to this is going to be no. If you have DACA in the past or something else, this will be a yes, and then you'll want to put the number down here. En pregunta 13, pedir si recibe un número de seguridad social en el pasado. Usualmente, si no tiene otros beneficios de inmigración o es su primera aplicación para DACA, no tiene número de seguridad social, su respuesta es no. Si usted renovar su DACA, pone sí y después pone su número de seguridad social abajo en los espacios. Okay. Up here, if, for example, you already have a Social Security card, then you're going to put no for questions 14 and 15 and skip to question 18. Si usted tiene un número de seguridad social ahora, su respuesta a preguntas 14 y 15 es no en los dos y no necesita responder a las preguntas 16 y 17. Pero para las personas que aplicar para su DACA inicial, usted responde a pregunta 14, sí quiere un número de seguridad social y también pedir permiso para compartir su información de este formulario con la Agencia de Seguro Social para enviar una nueva tarjeta a usted. So, in these questions for your initial DACA application, you're going to put yes, you want Social Security to send you a card, and yes, you give them permission, USCIS, permission to share this information with Social Security so they can automatically send you that new card once they approve your case. That's been really helpful in streamlining things, and so that's how we encourage you to do that. Y también si escoger sí, necesita poner información sobre los nombres de su mamá, su papá y su mamá. If you consent for Social Security to share that for Social Security to get that information, you do have to fill in your father's birth name and your mother's birth name. So that's your mother's maiden name before she got married. En esta parte sobre nombre de su mamá, es importante que pone la información de nombre de su mamá soltera antes de se casar, si cambia su nombre. Quiero poner el nombre en cuando ella nació. Okay. Esta parte necesita poner su país de nacionalidad y ciudadanía. So and here you're going to put whatever country you're from, wherever you were born and wherever you have citizenship. Okay. In this part here, part 2, place of birth, you're going to put the city, town you were born in, the state you were born in, the country you were born in, and the date of your birth. Aquí pone información sobre su nacimiento. Ciudad de nacimiento, estado de nacimiento, país de nacimiento y fecha de nacimiento. Aquí, pedir para información sobre su entrada en los Estados Unidos. So here they're going to ask about information about your last arrival in the U.S. Es su última entrada en los Estados Unidos. So si entró con permiso, otra vez pone información de su permiso, su I-94 aquí. If you entered with permission and you have a permit, you're going to put that I-94 number here. Si no entró con permiso, no pone nada, o pone NA. If you didn't enter with permission, you're going to leave this blank or put N/A, not applicable. In question 21, you're putting information about your current passport. En las preguntas de 21 pone información sobre su pasaporte vigente, número, país y fecha de expiración. Question 22, you're going to put the date of your last arrival in the US. So, esta pregunta en 22 es su última entrada en los Estados Unidos. So in my example earlier where someone came in 2005 but left a little bit in 2008 and then came back in 2008, this date here is going to be a 2008 date. En mi ejemplo anterior, con la persona que entró, su primera entrada fue en 2005, pero regresar a su país en 2008 y reentró otra vez en 2008, o, pone la fecha de la última entrada, 2008, en este lugar. Question 23 is where you cross the border, which we talked about on the other form. And this is the status at your last entry. So if you entered as a tourist, that's a B2. If you entered with no status, the answer is no status. So pregunta 23 es lugar en donde cruzar la frontera o entró los Estados Unidos. Y 24 es su estatus en el momento que cruzar la frontera o entró los Estados Unidos. So si entró con visa turista, pone B2 de turista. Si entró sin estatus, pone no estatus. Okay. Y pregunta 25 es si entró con status. Discúlpame. Question 25 is asking what your current status is. So right now, in this moment, not at the time you entered, but right now, what status do you have in the US? The majority of you are going to have no status. But if for some reason you did have status right now, you'd want to put that. If you have lawful status in the US, though, we'd want to talk about why you're applying for DACA, because you probably don't need DACA if you have lawful status. En pregunta 25, pedir su estatus migratorio legal ahora en los Estados Unidos. So, por ejemplo, en este momento, si tiene un permiso de turista o otro tipo de visa legal que no venció, pone la información aquí. Pero si usted tiene estatus legal en este momento, probablemente no necesita DACA. So, usualmente, la respuesta más común en este espacio es no status, no tiene status. Okay. Question 26 is if you were ever had a student or exchange visitor visa, you would put a number here. Pregunta, most of you aren't going to have this. Pregunta 26 es pedir para un número si tiene una visa de estudiante o pero la mayoría de las personas esta pregunta no aplique, so no pone nada aquí. Okay. Pregunta 27 es la categoría de su elegibilidad para trabajar en los Estados Unidos. Es un números y letras de leyes de los Estados Unidos. So this is they're asking for what category of in which category are you eligible to work in the US? And under DACA, that category is C33. So you would put a C in the first box, 33 in the second box, and nothing in the third box. So cuando aplica para DACA, la categoría de su elegibilidad para trabajar en los Estados Unidos es abajo de categoría C33. So pone C en la primera cadena y 33, los dos números en el segundo espacio, y en el tercero espacio no pone nada, nothing. Okay. Los últimos preguntas en este fórmulas no aplica a usted. No pone nada, pasar, hasta que parte 3. So at this point, none of the rest of this applies to you. You're going to skip to part 3. And then this section is just like the other form. You're going to say whether you understand English, whether you used an interpreter, and whether you used a preparer. So en esta parte es lo mismo del otro formulario. Necesita escoger si usted entender inglés y leer inglés, Si no, necesita poner la información sobre la persona que ayuda con interpretación aquí. Y en pregunta 2, pedir si uso una persona para preparar su formulario. La persona de interpretación y la persona que preparar no necesitan son los mismos, dependiente en su situación. The person who prepares it and the person who interprets it aren't necessarily usually the same one. And in fact, I would recommend that they not be. You should have your attorney be the preparer and your interpreter should be somebody else, just to make sure you're getting accurate information. En esta parte, en las preguntas 3 a 6, 3 a 5 es información de su número de teléfono y correo electrónico. Pregunta 6 no aplica. Questions 3, 4, 5 are about your phone number and email. Question 6 doesn't apply. You skip that. You're going to go down to where you sign. En ese formulario usted es un aplicante. So, firma en espacio 7A y pone la fecha en 7B. So in this part, you're the applicant and you're going to sign and date the form. The next part of the form is filled out by the interpreter, and the last part of the form is filled out by whoever prepared it. So después de su firma es preguntas para la persona que ayuda con la interpretación, y después de eso es preguntas para la persona que ayuda con preparando este formulario. Y es todo de este formulario. Okay. And then I said, discúlpame por un momento. Uh-oh. I lost my screen sharing. Just a second. There's one more form that I want you all to just go over really quickly. Good news is it's a very fast form. And I'm going to pull that up and we're going to go back to sharing our screen. And we're going to look at that. Okay. So, la última formulario es el formulario I-765 worksheet. And for whatever reason, I can't make it full screen. Let's see if I can figure that out. Okay. Oh, no, that's the wrong one. Hold on. It's being difícil. Okay, here we go. Okay. So, it's one page, una página, una hoja. It's your name, it's your income information, and it's a short space to write why you want a work permit under DACA. Necesita poner su información de su nombre verdadero, legal, completo, y después información sobre sus ingresos por cada año, los I just blanked on the word for expenses, los gastos para un año, y si tiene cosas con validad, like assets, which is like, a house or a car, if you have something like that. The numbers don't really matter. You just need to fill out the form. Los números no son significantes, necesita llenar, pero no cambiar su elegibilidad de DACA. The numbers don't change your eligibility for DACA. You just need to fill them in. And in here, you want to put a short, nice statement about why you want to be able to get a work permit, what it means to you to have a work permit and be able to save money for college or support your family or pursue your career. Short, though. Doesn't need to be long, like 5-6 sentences. Here, you're going to put a short statement about why you want DACA, why you want a work permit under DACA. Oh, I said that. Sorry. My brain is just forgetting to switch to Spanish. So, en esta parte es una declaración o explicación muy corto porque usted quiere un permiso de trabajo en los Estados Unidos entre DACA, por DACA. So, explica que quiere trabajar para ahorrar dinero para su futuro, para su familia, para su educación. No necesita mucho. Es una explicación corta aquí. Okay. So those are the three forms. Estos son los tres formularios para aplicar para DACA, con renovación o para la primer tiempo. So those are three forms to renew or apply for the first time. At this point, I'll do a quick summary of the requirements for DACA. And I'm going to go over what you need for an initial DACA because that's what I want us to focus on here. So en esta parte, voy a revisar los requisitos de DACA para una aplicación inicial para DACA. You must be, as we kind of touched on a little bit, the key thing is you've got to be able to prove that you entered the U.S. before June 15th, 2007, and that you've stayed in the U.S. since then till now. El primer requisito es establecer que usted entró a los Estados Unidos antes del 15 de junio de 2007 y se queda en los Estados Unidos hasta que ahora. That means that you need to provide evidence showing that. So, para establecer este requisito necesita pruebas, necesita evidencias. So, you need to be, that. And por cada persona is diferente. For every person, this is different because you may have great evidence, your family may have great evidence, you may not. So you have to be a little creative here. I prefer that you gather something for every month of every year you've been in the United States. That's like the best case scenario. Es mejor si usted tiene evidencia por cada mes en los Estados Unidos después de, después de su entrada. So, that's like school records, medical records, dental records, rent receipts, photos with dates on them, social media posts with dates, evidencias en la mayoría de los casos incluye archivos de médicos, archivos de escuela, archivos de doctores, dentistas, fotografías con fechas o status en social media con fechas, con personas en lugares ciertos en los Estados Unidos. Si usted no tiene porque muy joven cuando entró, es posible uso evidencias de sus padres en las mismas categorías, de trabajo, de renta o su casa, recibos de renta, contratos de renta y más. La más evidencias usted tiene es mejor. So, a lot of times people don't have evidence from when they first came into the US because they were really, really young. And so in that case, we try to use evidence from their parents. So we're using employment records, we're using medical records for them, we're using rent receipts, any other stuff to show that you were living in the US with your parents. The more evidence you have, the better. Don't leave something out. If you think you have too much, you can't have too much. No es posible enviar más evidencia, like too much. How do you say too much? What am I missing, Cynthia?
Demasiado.
Demasiado, gracias. Demasiado evidencia. It's porque es mucho tiempo, right? It's a lot of paper. It's a lot of time. It's a lot of paper. So, you just want to look for anything and everything you can find. The good news is that one of the other requirements for DACA is you have to prove that you came in before 16. And usually this is the same evidence will meet both requirements. Las buenas noticias es un otro requisito de DACA es necesita establecer que usted entró a los Estados Unidos antes de usted tiene 16 años y usualmente la evidencia probar los dos. So, evidencias de escuela o doctora o de vacunas, por ejemplo, buena evidencia usualmente que entró antes de tiene 16 años. And another type of evidence is immunization records. those can be really helpful because usually you had to have those to go to school. Another requirement is that you have to prove that you were in the US on June 12th, June 15th, 2012. Un otro requisito es necesita probar que usted está en los Estados Unidos en 15 de junio de 2012. Para este requisito, los archivos de escuela no ayudan mucho porque es en el verano, pero si usted asiste a escuela en el verano, uso estos records. Obtiene estos records. También archivos de deportes are buena evidencia. So you have to be able to prove you were here on June 15th, 2012. That's tough a lot of times because there's no school usually. If you went to summer school, then you can use summer school records, or if you went to summer camp, or if you worked or you had a bank account, or you played sports, sometimes those were in the summer. You have to get really creative again to kind of come up with anything you can think of from the summer, maybe pictures from your birthday party that show like, hey, I was 6 in that year or whatever. Otros tipos de evidencia son like de esta fecha de junio de 2012 es de festividades de nacimiento con fotos, con número de su edad, o actividades de iglesia, o un cliente tiene un contrato para un instrumento de música. Eso es buena evidencia también. So we had a client recently who was able to come up with a contract for renting a musical instrument, and that helped us get where we needed on the evidence. So any type of evidence is acceptable. Well, that's not true. Let me rephrase that. Look for anything and everything you can find that on paper that would show that you were in the US on that date. If you really, really, really can't find anything, the last ditch effort is to try to use affidavits. Si no tiene nada de su presencia en junio de 2012, es posible uso declaración jurado de personas, pero este tipo de evidencia no es muy fuerte. No prefiere esto, prefiere otras evidencias, pero es para aumentar otras evidencias en ciertas situaciones. So es una posibilidad, pero no es muy fuerte. The other thing you have to have is you have to have proof that you're going to school or that you graduated from school. Otro requisito es pruebas de asiste a escuela o graduó de escuela. Para este requisito necesita una copia de su diploma o su GED o sus calificaciones en la escuela o su horario de clases. Different types of evidence can show you're in school, your class schedule, your grades. You definitely want to copy your diploma if you graduated, or your GED if you have that. If you're enrolled in a GED program, you need to show proof that you're enrolled in that program. You won't have necessarily a class schedule for that, but you will have other evidence like payments and online documents and records showing that you're enrolled in an accredited GED program. Si usted en este momento en un programa de GED necesita uso documentos para establecer su participación en este programa, como pagos, otros documentos de su participación en la línea o otros tipos de verificaciones de su su programa y también necesita confirmar el programa de GED es certificado del estado de Colorado. De Colorado. Okay. Necesita, the other thing I like people to include that you need a photo ID of some kind to include. So that could be your current passport if you have one. It could be a driver's license if you have one. It could be your school ID if you have one of those. Those are the 3 easiest ones to use. Otro, I guess, requisito evidencia en su aplicación para DACA es una evidencia de su identidad con fotos, so, como su pasaporte de su país vigente, licencia para manejar posible, o sus identificaciones de escuela con foto. También necesito incluir su acta de nacimiento con traducción. I also include your birth certificate with translation if needed. The other thing you need to include are 2 photos. Y la otra cosa necesito incluir are 2 fotos tipo pasaporte de los Estados Unidos. So you want to make sure you have those photos. And of course, you need to make sure you include payment for the filing fees. Y también necesita incluir pago de los tarifas de gobierno. Right now, that is $495 for all the applications together, and you can submit them on separate checks or on one check, or however you submit the payment. So los tarifas en total de este procedimiento es $495. Es posible pagar en un cheque o en 2 cheques diferentes para cada formulario. Prefiero incluir todo en un cheque. So that's kind of a quick summary of everything. The one thing, there's some extras you can include because DACA is a discretionary application. That means that even if you meet the minimum requirements, the government could still say no if they wanted to. So it's really a nice idea to tell them why it's a good, why you deserve DACA. Send in some letters from your teachers or your employers or anyone else who can really talk about what a great value you add to your community. Una otra parte de DACA es discreción. El gobierno puede el poder para negar su aplicación si quiere. So es una buena idea para incluir un poquito de evidencia sobre su buen carácter moral, como cartas de maestras o de empleadores o personas que conoce usted muy bien y hablar sobre su carácter y sus actividades o participación en su comunidad. Okay, let's see, what else do I need? Si usted tiene historia con casos criminales o de tráfico, necesita obtener archivos certificados para estos, para incluir en su aplicación. So if for some reason you have a criminal history or a traffic citation history, you would need to get some certified records to include in your DACA application for that as well. So I'm kind of running out of time, but para revisar otra vez los requisitos para DACA, necesita probar que entró a los Estados Unidos antes de 15 de junio de 2007. Y también esa entrada es antes de usted tiene 16 años. Y después de su entrada, se queda en los Estados Unidos a establecer su residencia en los Estados Unidos hasta que ahorra. Y también probar que usted está en los Estados Unidos en 15 de junio de 2012. Usted tiene buen carácter moral. Usted no tiene estatus legal en este momento. No tiene una historia criminal significante como DUIs o DWAIs o más grave de estos. Like violencia doméstica es un problema. Y casos con drogas también es un problema. Recordar que marihuana es legal en el estado de Colorado, pero no es legal para los oficiales de inmigración, porque inmigración es en base de las leyes federales y marihuana no es legal en las leyes federales en este momento. So, if you have any of those issues with marijuana or other kinds of significant arrests or criminal history, you need an attorney before you file. The other thing I like to tell people that I really want you to, if you're going to do this on your own, which I'm hoping you guys are going to do this, you prepare an organized packet and that you put an index, a list of everything that you've got that you're sending to the government on the front of it, and that you make a complete copy, one complete copy of every single thing you're sending to the government before you put it in the envelope. So, otra cosa es cuando llenar y enviar su paquete para DACA al gobierno, preparar sus paquetes y evidencias con organización, cronológicamente de cada año, con flechas, por ejemplo, lista los años, 2006, 2007, etc. Y también antes de poner en su sobre para enviar al gobierno, hacer una copia de su paquete completamente antes de enviar, ¿ok? Necesita guardar su copia, porque es posible el gobierno perder todo. Es posible. It's possible the government can lose it, and you want to have proof that you sent it, and you want to have proof of what specifically you sent. That's why I tell you to make a copy. Okay, I think that's everything I had on my list. Did I leave anything out?
Jennifer, thank you very much for running through all that. I want to let everybody know, and Cynthia can maybe help me out with the Spanish, but in a couple of weeks, we hope to have a legal workshop where several lawyers will be able to review your DACA applications. And this will be the second one of these we've done, and we'll continue to do more. And so that will be a free workshop. So please watch our Mountain Dreamers Facebook and Mountain Dreamers Instagram and the Mountain Dreamers website for information on that. We do not have it scheduled yet, but we will.
Gracias a todos por asistir. Solo le queremos dejar saber que vamos a tener un taller de DACA gratis donde vamos a tener abogados que van a poder revisar las aplicaciones que llenen ustedes solos. Así ya estén seguros que todo esté lleno completamente. Va a ser esto en un par de semanas. Todavía no tenemos la fecha exacta, pero si nos puede seguir en las redes sociales, en Instagram y en Facebook, y también puede ver en nuestro sitio de web de Mountain Dreamers. Ahí vamos a poner cuando ya tengamos la fecha.
Y gracias a todos para su paciencia con mi español también.
Yes, thank you for doing that. We really appreciate it. It will make the Facebook Live for people who are Spanish monolingual speakers. It will make it more useful. We will save the Facebook Live on Facebook, and we'll share it around too. So if you're preparing your application, please use the video to help you prepare it.
And thank you everyone for your really good questions. Please feel free to reach out if you have more. We'll be able to get those answered. You can post them in those various locations. And you can ask some more right now before we go too.
Si tienen más preguntas antes de terminar esta sesión, si las quieren preguntar, o también nos pueden mandar mensaje por Facebook o por Instagram, o ponerlo en el comentario del live que hicimos con Mountain Dreamers.
And Cynthia, can you tell them how they can get in touch with you to look for assistance from Mountain Dreamers?
También si necesitan asistencia financiera para poder aplicar para DACA, pueden mandarme un texto, llamarme por teléfono o mandarme un correo electrónico. Lo voy a poner ahorita en el chat, mi número de teléfono y mi correo electrónico, pero también pueden mandar un mensaje por Facebook o por Instagram y por ahí le podemos mandar.
And you can reach us, you can reach Mountain Dreamers on by Facebook Messenger, through the website, through email. Cynthia's email and phone number are on the website too. So there's lots of ways to reach us, and we can help answer questions and maybe help with financial assistance and some more free legal help coming up. So thank you, everybody. And thank you, especially Jennifer, for going through all that. We really appreciate it. Thank you, Cynthia.
Yeah.
And yeah, good night, everybody. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you. Have a good night.